Recently, I've been getting the urge to become closer to God, and I feel I could achieve that by sharing the gospel to people. So, I want to read you a passage from the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew 14:22-33. Then Jesus made the disciples get into the boat, go ahead to the other side of the lake. After sending the people away, he went up a hill by himself to pray. When evening came, Jesus was alone, and by this time the boat was far out in the lake, tossed about by waves, because the wind was blowing against it. Between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came to his disciples walking on the water. When they saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. "Is it a ghost?" they said, and they screamed with fear. Jesus spoke to them at once. "Courage," he said. It is I. Don't be afraid." Then Peter spoke up. "Lord, if it's really you, order me to come out on the water to you." "Come," answered Jesus. So Peter got out of the boat and started walking on the water to Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he was afraid and started to sink down the water. "Save me, Lord," he cried. At once Jesus reached out and grabbed hold of him and said, "What little faith you have! Why did you doubt?" They both got into the boat, and the wind died down. Then the disciples in the boat worshipped Jesus. "Truly you are the Son of God," they exclaimed. So many times when we have a sign of God, we usually ignore it, or we usually are afraid of it. When I was younger, I usually never went to church. I usually skipped it. When I was still doing my communion and confirmation, I skipped church many times. But it wasn't until freshman year and sophomore year where I realized the importance of church. I was afraid of entering the church because I was ashamed that I wasn't good enough for God. It's so hard for me to enter the church. And then one time in the start of junior year, I decided to give it a chance, to give God a chance, and He changed my life. He made me better. He gave me wisdom. I mean, yeah, I'm still a sinner. I still have flaws, but I feel that I'm not alone when I have problems or when I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm with Jesus. And many of us choose to ignore that and choose to ignore that calling, just like the disciples did when they saw Jesus walking on the water. They didn't believe, and Peter even told Jesus, "Let me walk to you on the water." So Jesus said to him, Come, follow me." And it was going great. He started to walk. He was walking towards Jesus, but then all of a sudden the wind came, the waves came, and all of a sudden he started to drown, and he started to sink to the ocean. And many times in life we feel lost, and we feel like Jesus, when we're following Jesus, that when something happens, we tend to leave him. We tend to say, "Oh Lord, why have you done this to me?" Or we tend to blame Jesus for the problem, when in reality it's our faith that didn't work. It's because we weren't following him. Even though the storms comes, even though the wind, the waves start to come into you, you could still reach him. You could still reach him if you have enough faith. You could still get to him. And even though Peter didn't get to get close to Jesus, Jesus still grabbed him, which tells us one thing, that Jesus will always try to find you. Jesus will always try to find you, but he can't force you. He can't force you to find him. You see, you gotta open that door for him. You see, every single time you have a problem, you have something going on, he always knocks on the door and he tells you, "Let me help you with it." And it's so hard to open that door. for me, I struggled a lot to get into the church and start reading. My parents, they don't go to church, so I, as a person, didn't believe it was important. I believed in God, but I didn't understand. I didn't go to church, and that kind of, I didn't have that type of religion, so I started to go to church by myself and started to read the Word of God and all of its importance. And all of a sudden everything started to make sense. That time when I went to the church, I started to feel at peace in a way, and things started to work out. And after he picks up Peter, the storm stops, and all of a sudden the apostles are like, "You're the Son of God. You're the Son of God." But the thing is, they didn't believe in him when he was in the water. They didn't believe it was him. And that's the problem. Most people want Jesus to show up right there in front of them to believe him. And that's not how it works. You see, you gotta try to find him. You gotta try to seek him. You gotta start to have faith in him, to understand him, to say, "Lord, I may not see you, I may not be able to see you, I may not be able to hear you, I may not be able to touch you, but I know you're here, and I know and I have faith that you're here. I know you're here with me in every single time, in the bad times, in the good times. My life could be the best, but I know you're here. Or my life could be right now very bad, horrible, but I know you're here, and I know you're here with me no matter what, no matter how my life is going, no matter how I am. I know you're here with me."